Has anyone ever been to a wedding where someone actually objected, and if so, how did that go? Groom found out that bride was cheating 2 days before the wedding day. He spilled the beans while exchanging the vows. Damn man. That's some TV show level shit. Dude paid most of it, and it was too late for a refund. I'm out this money. Might as well go out in style. Honestly, takes guts to do, but damned if I don't appreciate the follow-through. I hope he still had the reception too. Divorce party. You have to be married to get divorced though. That's such a shitty position to be in. You plan this event to celebrate finding your life mate. Find out it wasn't real. And you're still on the hook for it financially. Your only solace is to embarrass her in front of everyone. But also embarrass yourself in front of your loved ones with such a spectacle of being cheated on. It's not embarrassing to be cheated on. Fuck that. Disagree. Something can be embarrassing without it being one's fault. There's a lot of scenarios in life like that. Kind of. My uncle was getting married. Small, just a handful of family and a minister. I was videotaping. My grandmother was not into it at all. With each line spoken by the minister, she had a cutting, sarcastic response. I could not believe it. It was so unlike her. When that part came up, she said, I object. But, does it really matter? They are going to do it anyway. The minister just ignored her and proceeded, business as usual. They were divorced within a year. Wish I had a copy. Grandma called it, I guess. Or caused it. I had a friend who was a minister, and the subject came up if he asked the question during ceremonies he officiated. He laughed and said no way. He basically tells the couple not to include it because it only invites a moment of anxiety at best, misery at worst. His best story, and one of the reasons he stopped including the question, was a couple where the lead up to the wedding the couple was obviously in love. The bride-to-be was very smiley and happy. Day of the wedding she's stone-faced. He knows something is up because he's never seen her like this and he asks if she is okay. I'm fine. Right before the service. He asks again. I'm fine. He gets to the question, does anyone object to this union? The bride reaches over, grabs the maid of honor, shoves her into the bride's spot and says, you're screwing him, you marry him. And then stormed out of the church. Slightly different circumstances, but I know a guy that was the videographer at a wedding where the groom was the one that objected to the wedding at that point. When the priest asked if anyone objected, the groom broke down crying and said that he couldn't go through with the wedding. Apparently he had gotten a stripper pregnant, and felt like he had to marry the stripper instead of the bride. He got pulled into a side room by the officiant, his father, and the father of the bride while everyone else, including the bride, stood around awkwardly. A few minutes later the father of the bride came out and told everyone that the ceremony was over and the wedding was off, but that everyone was welcome to go to the reception and enjoy the food. My friend didn't stick around for the reception, so I have no idea how it all turned out, but apparently the bride was understandably not taking it well. And he got pulled into a side room by the officiant, his father, and the father of the bride. Was he ever seen again? Only parts of him. This makes me so sad. On what's supposed to be the happiest day of your life, you lose your best friend, presumably, and partner at the same time. Sad face. At least she didn't go quietly and rip the bandage nice and quick. I've seen people try and make it work anyway, so power to her. Fuck it. Everything is paid for and likely not getting any refunds, and the opportunity to share this in front of a large group of people they likely both know. I was at one where the groom thanked the bride's ex for dying as his loss was my gain. Didn't help the sons of his bride and ex were in attendance. Holy crap. Please tell me she divorced him. He's actually dead now, so perhaps it wasn't really his gain the way she seems to get rid of her husband. Well, that's either incredibly tragic or sort of suspicious. Or both at the same time. Groom, his loss, my gain. Bride, your gain? Next guy. Those last two guys were chumps. A friend of mine has a band that plays lots of weddings and other parties. They were hired for a birthday party that turned out to be a surprise wedding. The guy surprised his GF with a proposal and wanted to have a wedding ceremony then and there. She said no and left. A bit manipulative on his part, as are most public proposals. That alone deserves a no. My auntie's fiancé was already married. Lady stood up waving marriage cert, so wedding didn't go ahead. The reception was on a long boat, so we still went to that. The fiancé went back to home country to sort it out and never came back. I think someone commented that's the original reason why they say that line. To make sure if they're legally allowed to marry. Yup. That. And it used to be common for creditors to show up at the wedding to object if the groom was behind on payments, at which point the groomsmen typically took care of the debt. Edit. May not be true. One commenter couldn't find a source, and neither can I. Have heard this mentioned numerous times over the years, including by people I would consider reliable. But it may in fact not be true. By took care of the debt, I assume you mean beat the crap out of the random asshole trying to shame the groom? Oh yikes. So they really did have a legal reason to object. It was very awkward. Not quite the question as asked, but too funny to not share. Priest? Any objections? Father of the bride. Underscore lets out the hardest, loudest, most complex sounding sneeze I've ever heard in my life. Completely with involuntarily saying, achoo. Underscore mother of the bride. Hammered on champagne. For fuck's sake, Jerry. It took a good 5 minutes for everyone to regain their composure. And GT, for fuck's sake, Jerry. For some reason, I heard this in an Irish accent, and it made it funnier. Jerry on Dairy Girls, maybe? I could def see his wife saying, for fuck's sake, Jerry, in an Irish accent. Nice, Jerry. I sneezed. Oh, I'm not allowed to sneeze. I went to a wedding where the best man was replaced a week before because he banged the bride. But the wedding still went ahead just with a different best man. They are divorced now. This is only tangentially related, but I had a friend I knew for like 3 months who told me at the wedding I was the maid of honor. The wedding was starting, I was pushed to the front. I was chosen over her own sisters. The whole wedding was that kind of chaos. It was the best wedding I've ever been to. I had to ask my original bridesmaids if they were okay with my older friends becoming my bridesmaids. They told me a day before the wedding they weren't coming. Why I wanted to change my bridesmaids? They both acted distant since a few months before the wedding, but a week before the wedding I had my bachelorette, and the original bridesmaids didn't even want to stay for dinner because they had work the next day. My other friends, who usually never gossip about others, told me this was a bit unusual. And it was really the least they could do for me. My friend from years ago had to drive 3 hours home and get up at 6 a.m. and she was so happy to celebrate me and with me. I also organized and paid for my own bachelorette, because I didn't want to feel like a burden for others. But how these so-called friends let me down during that stressful period is something I would never forget. So yes, sometimes there are emergency bridesmaids needed and you were at the right place. At the right time for her. I assume she was very grateful and relieved to have you there and be there for her. For multiple reasons too. My wife was promoted to bridesmaid at about 6:30 a.m. on the day of a friend's wedding because her very pregnant Mo had a scare and ended up having to go to the hospital. It happens. My own brothers are evidence of this. Brother 1 was getting married. The night before, Brother 2 gets wasted and decides to drive. He gets pulled over and thrown in jail at like 4 a.m. Brother 1 won't bail him out because he needs the money for the honeymoon. He does manage to talk the cops into letting him get Brother 2's tux out of the impounded car so another one of his friends can stand in his place for the wedding. Look, I don't need the moron. I don't even need the moron's car. I just need the tux out of the back so someone less moronic can be my best man tonight. This was in America, and the wedding was in a Buddhist temple. Parents of the groom stood up and objected because they didn't believe the bride was of the same class. They spoke in another language, so most of the English-speaking guests didn't know they were objecting. My husband was the best man and those closest to the couple knew this might happen. The Buddhist priest said he would handle it if the parents tried anything. After the parents spoke for a while, the priest said to the groom, "You've heard what your parents had to say. What do you want to do?" The groom replied, "I want to marry my bride." So the priest asked the parents to leave. At this point, the rest of the guests are cluing in that this was not a nice part of the ceremony, and that the parents were actually objecting. So, as the parents walked out, some of the guests were berating them, saying things like, "You should be ashamed of yourself," and "How could you do that?" And even though the groom was not happy with his parents, that was very hard for him to hear. That was 30 years ago. The couple is still married. They have 2 beautiful, successful children. After the groom's mom passed away, the groom's father came around and was involved in their lives until he died.